Hello, everyone. I'm Nicolle Praino with the Nashville Post, and today I have with me Kristin, Darby, Mark Blaze, and Barbara Bennett for our Technology Innovation panel for our Innovation and Ideas digital series. So I'll start with you guys and ask each of you some questions individually, but feel free to jump in and contribute to each of your questions if you feel like it's appropriate. And then we'll go to some questions all together. So Mark, we'll start with you because you're new to the Tech Council. You're just barely, is it a couple weeks on the job?
This is week number 4.
Yeah, 4 weeks on the job. So what are your goals for the next year and years and beyond?
So in light of week 4, and of course we chatted previously, and I mentioned that I'm really on a 2 to 3 month listening tour, trying to understand and get a better perspective, because my goals need to be aligned with the community's goals. I do believe we've got a responsibility to elevate the tech community within this area. So that is going to be the foundation, which is a very simple sort of statement, I know, but we've got some really exciting things we're talking about. They're on the table. So that's my way of saying stay tuned, and I'll give you more. But we know there's a need for a strategic plan, clarity of our mission statement and value propositions. So working on those things, but getting a lot of insight from various sources. We have a meeting coming up.
Yes, we do. So I'm a former board member with the Greater Nashville Technology Council, and we're very excited, everybody in the community, about Mark joining and leading that organization. But it's a pivotal and really strategic component to continuing to push innovation throughout Nashville. So we're very excited about his leadership.
That kind of brings me perfectly into one of the questions I had for you was about state, public and private partnerships. How does that work together? And, the Technology Council is a great example, you guys meeting and that sort of thing. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined the state of Tennessee roughly 60 days ago, so also very new in my seat. So I think previously I've sat in the private sector, and this is giving me an opportunity to really develop a understanding and perspective from the public sector. With that, I think the collaboration is extremely essential. With the Nashville Technology Council in particular, that has really been a convener of talent, allowing connections to be made, and just those very important relationships that help drive innovation and help you identify when you have an opportunity or idea. They really act as a convener to bring together the essential talent and capabilities across the city to be able to enable solutions that benefit Nashville.
So I'll jump in, and it's kudos to the state, and it's something I believe is important. We've got to invest in our own. And, I was having a conversation Friday about the Williamson County Schools Innovation Hub. Mm-hmm. The state has played a major role in that, making that happen. I now feel that we have a responsibility as the council to support and do some things to enhance the experience and what the deliverables are of that hub.
Yep.
Some great companies from young kids have already come out of that. How do you lift up the next generation, as you're doing this work?
We were chatting, and we both were in agreement. Education is really going to be the root of it, the long-term success. There's strategies that can address current needs. Ultimately, it's going to be education. How do we, first step, find? When you talk about innovation, talent is not exclusive by zip code, but opportunity can be at times. And I think we've got to find the talent, give them those opportunities, develop them, and then, again, we talked about, Barbara and I were just chatting in a minute, how do we retain that talent? We don't want the talent leaving. We want the talent to stay here. And, to me, the full cycle will be when we've watched a student whether it's middle school, high school, and we engage them, we help them, and then fast forward down the road, we see someone that's in a high-level role, been successful, because that's generational. And I do believe that's where our responsibility lies.
When we talk about innovation, that can mean a lot of different things. But I think one thing that everybody is looking at right now is AI. And Barbara is a great expert in that right now, I think, in terms of especially governance and regulation and those sorts of things. So how are companies adapting to using this and working with it and the regulations around it?
I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding that there are no laws, and therefore companies have no direction or guidance in how to develop responsible AI. That is not true. There are a lot of existing laws that govern AI: privacy, security, intellectual property, tort, product liability. And already there have been enforcement actions, class action lawsuits, and whatnot. So I think that the fear or paralysis that may come from a businesses looking at the speed of development in AI may prevent some companies from realizing that actually we pretty much know what the risks are. All the existing laws and all the developing laws actually coalesce around about 5 principles. Privacy and security is kind of one of those principles. Bias or discrimination is one. Responsibility, accountability is one. Accuracy, reliability is one. And transparency, kind of explainability, is the 5th. A lot of existing laws actually address those. Notice and choice with privacy, fairness and with the FTC Act, things like that are already discrimination laws. But those 5 principles can really give guidance to companies to identify the risks and then manage those risks using kind of traditional risk management principles. I think it's scalable, I think it's doable. And so I do think that companies can right now begin to set up an infrastructure or program that will adapt with the development of AI as it goes forward.
Who has the responsibility for governance?
Responsibility and governance, to me, are really trust issues. It's a matter of developing trust. Trust in your customer base, trust in your citizenry, trust in your fellow business and government colleagues. And so I think it is a responsibility of all stakeholders to take part in that governance that leads to that trust. Now, for businesses, I think obviously it begins with them because we control what we can control. We can't control what other people necessarily do. And with government, I think it begins with them. So I think everybody has that responsibility, and then by communicating and collaborating, you can make it much easier, by sharing that responsibility going forward.
Thoughts from you guys on the side of the state, Kristin?
I think governance is an essential element to really foundationally set any organization or public sector entity up for success with AI. It is developing rapidly, and the what needs to be governed may change over time, but I think many of the frameworks that we've had serve us well. They're extensible and just changing the elements of what we're looking for, I think may change at a more rapid pace than maybe some technologies of the past. But that is truly essential. From who's involved, I think it really is a mixture of leaders across the organization to create a collective and collaborative approach to how best to govern. And so in every organization, those entities may be a mixture of business, technology, legal, compliance, all of those viewpoints coming together to create an effective perspective. The other thing is, depending on the entity, is also getting outside perspectives. So whether it's representation of your customer, your citizen, making sure that those viewpoints are well represented to ensure that any way that you're planning to use that technology or innovate is reflective of those that you're intending to serve.
Mark, companies have been using AI for a long time, may not have been generative AI. From the kind of private sector technology perspective, how are you seeing them adapt to this new generative?
Well, I think what you're seeing is it's just a fast forward of the model. But I think a lot of the fear is the fear of the unknown, and yet it's just historical. If it wasn't AI, there's been predecessors. And it's shown, and as Barbara said, it's applying the correct practices towards how we use it, how we govern it. So I think some people are scared of the unknown, but we're going to be fine because I think a place like Nashville is really well positioned because of our culture and sort of the ethical nature of this culture. And that's not trying to be disparaging of other areas, but I think we all know that's one of the best things about where we live.
There is something special and collaborative about Nashville. What are some of the promising innovations you guys are hearing about?
So NVIDIA's, one of the things that kind of intrigues me is NVIDIA's open source. It's NeMo, their platform. I think that will be interesting. There's then you can go to, AI, one of the things it is going to, I'm going to let you discuss this in greater detail, but power is going to be a huge factor related to AI. I have a sort of unique, my son's a nuclear engineer in the Navy on subs. So I'm really intrigued about nuclear power, advanced nuclear reactors, where they fit in the landscape, because we're going to need to make some pivots towards how we handle AI and its needs, because it has some different needs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the shift from being more focused on software and not worrying about infrastructure and technology has changed with AI. There's definitely a resurgence in the focus on having the critical infrastructure, understanding what needs to be retrofitted, whether it's within your own entities or resources, or you're using third party. And I think two of the major elements are certainly the power consumption is exponentially higher, and then that creates cooling complexities. And so everyone has to think through those elements as you're thinking about any AI solution. It really pivots you from considering as the digital consumption increases, where best to put that compute load, whether it's in your facilities or another external facility. There is a cost to that, and largely related to some of those changes, including utility-based requirements for the more advanced models.
And there are legal issues, of course, fortunately or unfortunately, with all of this development. Co-location of data centers next to energy facilities is a huge legal issue now that involves NERC and a lot of regulatory agencies, because there is a fear that the data centers are going to get favoritism with respect to consumption, and that it's going to cause rates to go up for consumers and households, and also instability in the power supply for consumers and for national defense. So there's always a legal twist to these things.
How do we build an inclusive environment? You kind of mentioned it's not limited to zip code, but it can be limited to opportunity. That was a great way to put it. And how do we build an inclusive environment around innovation and make sure everyone knows that their ideas are welcome, and build up that education aspect, like you were saying?
I feel, I'm sitting right here, public, private, and I think it's going to take collaboration and support It's not going to happen without everybody being engaged. And, again, I go back to, we're very fortunate in this community. That's the core of this community. I was just at a luncheon, and it was Benjamin Goldberg from Strategic
Technology
Hospitality. So about restaurants. And he just said, one of the reasons they've succeeded here is Nashville and Middle Tennessee has a community spirit where it wants to support. So I think it's, we need to maintain that as we look to provide opportunities for innovation. But I do think it's important, and I can go back to, the Williamson County Innovation Schools Innovation Hub, private, public, it's a venture that's really coming together. And those are the things we're going to have to, I really encourage. And I think we need to look outside just what has historically been the areas, and we look to how do we become a more diverse culture of innovation in this community.
Do you think that model that Williamson County has with the Innovation Center is replicable in other school systems?
Yes, with some moving parts that I would definitely want to be side by side with some people far more intelligent than me and with experience. But the beauty of that is you've got a model that's, it's easy to replicate than just create. Mm-hmm. And because we can learn from, I'm sure, there's folks at the state would say, hey, let's go left on this particular element instead of right next time. Mm-hmm. So I do believe so.
Where are we seeing the most momentum in the technology industry? And then also on the flip side of that, where are the gaps? That's kind of for anybody. What do you guys see?
A lot in terms of coding, software coding, and that sort of thing, in terms of use of AI, healthcare, energy. To address the issue of inclusiveness, though, Mark made a point about education. Mm-hmm. I listened to a very interesting podcast, AI and I, and the most recent one had a consultant who consults with the CEOs of some of the big companies, Apple, Google, Meta, and they are looking at the death of the knowledge worker and the rise of what they're calling the wisdom worker. And they define wisdom as having 3 elements. And they go down in more detail than this. I don't have time to, but it's a very interesting article to read or podcast to listen to. And they say, first of all, it's emotional clarity. You need to train people to be, not to manage their emotions, but to get to the root of their emotions and realize the role their emotions play in the workplace and their relationships. Second, it's discernment, being able to look at the chaos and the overload of information and drill down on what's important. And the third is engagement. And they, have a definition of that, which includes vulnerability and wonder and objectivity. I think one more thing. But those companies are now training their workers in these new skills to prepare them for the death of the knowledge economy. And so I think that education and things like that is a real key to inclusivity and success.
Yeah, I will just add that I think from an education perspective, the technology has the opportunity to be more and more democratized, where accessibility will increase. That's my hope. With that is the education and the knowledge to use it effectively. And I do think that there's some shifts that, as we talk about AI and many things, whether it be manual tasks or other functions that agent-based AI solutions will be able to provide, the need to be able to understand what you need an agent for, that AI can help accelerate, being very clear as to what problems you're trying to solve, and understanding how to manage outcomes, exceptions, requires a level of critical thinking that isn't necessarily the process or execution of process in the middle, but the ability to understand those ends. And that's a skill set that needs to be developed in all of us as we continue to utilize this technology and understand if it's working effectively and delivering the benefits. So I think that partnership from an education perspective to continue to develop the ability to articulate problems most effectively, which really drills into what you were saying, Barbara, but to understand if the problem's being solved, and if not, work with the technology to be able to adapt it to get the solutions that are desired. So I think there'll be as we talk about new roles or new needs that are coming as part of this AI transition, I do think that will become an important component of leveraging this innovation.
Any gaps that you guys see in technology, in Nashville specifically? Are there places that are innovating in certain industries or areas where we're not and we should be? I
believe, and this is a viewpoint, again, I'll refer to people that I feel probably have a better perspective than I. One of the things we need to do is connect the capital better. We need to, Nashville is probably more capital now than ever before. We've got to make sure we connect it effectively. And that goes back to, there's the Greater Nashville Private Capital Association. I mean, they are going to have an input in that and how it's done effectively, because I think it's also important, as we talked about, the gaps will occur if we don't have a conscious intent on making sure it covers the entire community. We have healthcare is the leader in this community. I mean, we all know healthcare technology, innovation, money will gravitate to that. But I think it's important we look for other areas as well, so we have that diversity in our innovation ecosystem.
Okay, so we're going to go through a quick lightning round to wrap this up. So tell me one technology that you're excited about in Nashville. Kristin, you start.
So I think it's the advancement that we're seeing come out of healthcare. I came from healthcare, and I think it's really the genomics area and what that can provide to improving patient healthcare outcomes.
Mark?
Mine would be the community, and I could go through a list of the programs that are involved. We talked about the Innovation Hub, but it's just the community and it's the spirit of embracing innovation, but creating that infrastructure. So, I referenced earlier NVIDIA, but obviously that isn't local, but there's some great things going on in healthcare, fintech. You can, if I mention one, I will be disparaging of many that are doing great things right now. So I'm going to sit on the fence right there.
Barbara?
I like the way the law schools here, Vanderbilt, Belmont, are developing AI programs to train students in the use of AI as well as the legal issues and governance in AI. I think that is innovative and necessary.
Mm-hmm. What's one idea you want to know more about?
Quantum.
Nuclear energy.
And I'm interested, it's more pedantic, but in the development of technology that I've read about to go back and edit AI in terms of to decrease hallucinations, as well as, from a privacy perspective, delete certain data. They're developing certain technology that can actually detrain AI models, which is difficult to do, and I'm interested in learning more about that.
To wrap up, for everybody, do your best. One sentence about what Nashville must get right to lead in technology innovation.
So I would suggest that building on what we had here, it's creating an innovative and inclusive workforce that has been trained well to create sustainable innovation.
I'd say investment in the educational infrastructure to support our talent.
And this won't be a surprise, I think, governance. Governing in a way that is aligned with success.
I think that's great. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.